I know some of you. I don't know all of you. My name is Girgis, and I've been here a couple of times, so I do see some familiar faces. Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
It's great. You know, it would be really nice if we were all together and had fewer empty chairs in the back. Is it possible to come and fill these chairs here? And thank you.
Nobody wants to sit in the back.
Nobody wants to sit in the front.
Usually.
I don't kick. So. Well, I'm really honored and privileged to be with you this evening, and to Abuna Buttress asked me to come by and really have a discussion with you. This is not me standing up here giving you any lecture. I really like to hear your perspective on things, and so that's my hope and prayer tonight, that we'll be able to engage each other in this topic that we're going to speak about. And the topic actually tonight is becoming the person God created me to be. And you notice I have a comma with a couple dots. Comma with a couple dots. Becoming the person God created me to be, I was going to put a period there. And I said, well, okay, we won't put a period there. I don't want a full stop. We'll continue the message for my future spouse. So what does this mean? When you read this title, Put This Way, what does it mean to you? What are some initial thoughts? What do you think this topic is going to be about? Any thoughts? What has this whole month been about? All the talks, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, am I the first talk about this?
No.
Okay.
No.
So that's good.
Yeah.
So we're starting off on the right foot. But just looking at the title, what do you make of that title? What do you envision that this lecture is going to be about? What do you envision this to be? Yeah.
I guess I interpret it as trying to be like a complete and healthy person, so that when we go into relationships, it's a healthy one. But I kind of I don't know if it should be for my future spouse. I feel like it should be for me. But I can definitely appreciate the idea that it's essential to have a healthy relationship to be healthy. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I said, I was going to put a period here and take out this last part, because really the focus of this message is looking at ourselves and saying, what is it that am I missing? What am I missing? Not what am I missing based on society, but what am I missing in a relationship with my Creator? And so what do I mean by that? And so we'll continue on here. St. Paul describes this union as a mystery. In Ephesians chapter 5, and we read this always in the wedding ceremonies, Ephesians chapter 5, and he describes this relationship as a mystery. Well, mystery in the Greek text, if you go back to the Greek text, which is the second text, right? The Bible was originally written in Hebrew, right? And then translated to Greek. So in the Greek text, mystery, what does it mean? Anybody study Greek? you know what the word mystery means back in the Greek text? Well, it actually means sacrament. So when St. Paul says in Ephesians chapter 5 that this is a great sacrament, then we dig a little bit deeper and find out, what is this really relationship? Is it a mystery? Is it a mystery like we don't know where this person's coming from? Is that the mystery? Is that what he's talking about? No. He's talking about that this isn't a relationship that is made on earth. It's not made here. This relationship is made in heaven. God is making this relationship. It's a sacrament. And he comes and he introduces two people from different parts of the globe, different parts of the world. And then all of a sudden, these people find a certain type of attraction that is deeper than physical and more sustainable than any physical relationship could ever afford. And that's the mystery. That's the sacrament that we're speaking about here. God is the glue, and he becomes the glue that makes this relationship long-term and sustainable. Right? Of course, we know this verse in Genesis chapter 2:24. It's repeated again. St. Peter repeats this again in 1 Peter chapter 3. And he brings it back to us to let us understand that, again, this is the mystery. The mystery is for this reason. What reason are we speaking about? The reason is the mystery. It's the sacrament. For this sacrament, a man is called to leave his family, and we put it this way, to leave and cleave, right? Leave and cleave. So that's what men are called to do. And be united to his wife, and they become one flesh. And this is the definition, really, of that sacrament. That God looks down and sees one person. He doesn't see two individuals. He sees one. He sees one heart, one mind, one direction, one thought, one process. That's what he sees, right, in the sacrament. This is kind of cool. I was just doing some research, and I found this site. It's kind of strange. To lovehonorandvacuum.com. So this was a little bit strange. I was doing some research. And I guess what's really strange about this is, they say the millennial generation. I'm not sure. Are you guys part of that millennial generation? What's really interesting they say about the millennial. They did a survey. I just want to read you what they're saying. Many millennials are on the verge of believing that marriage is not needed anymore. This is a recent study. And they asked them why. Why do you think, why millennials are thinking that marriage is kind of a lost institution? And so here's what they said. Here's what many of them said. They said there's a lot of fear and anxiety against the idea of a permanent, lifelong relationship with another human being. So those two words, I want to draw your attention. Fear and anxiety. This is millennials. This is you guys, right? I read something else. I really want to read it to you. I thought it was very striking. We get so caught up in trying to find the right one. We get so caught up in trying to find the right one that we lose ourselves and our God-given identity in the process. I want to read that again. we get so caught up in trying to find the right one, and I'll put that in quotes, that we lose ourselves and our God-given identity in the process. We're plagued with confusion, doubt, and guilt. And worst of all, we're driven by fear. Again, we hear that word, fear. Now they subcategorize this fear. Fear of commitment, fear of failure, fear of abandonment, fear of being alone. This is what millennials are saying. And because of this, we end up in relationships that were never really good to us to begin with. But understanding the kind of person who fits into our story requires us, millennials, to first understand our story. So put it another way. Understanding the kind of person who's going to be a lifelong partner for me, I first have to understand who I am and my identity is in God, in a relationship with my Creator. So I'm not going to talk about the 10 top reasons to get married. I don't really advocate this site. It was just something that came up on Google when I was doing some research. To love, honor, and vacuum.com, it's not really one that I would advise you to go to. But what is interesting is psychologists and marriage counselors say that we are wired as human beings with these three specific needs. All human beings. Doesn't matter what culture, what religion, what way of life, but we all have these three. God created us with these three needs. So what are they? The need for self-worth. What's another way of saying that? Self-worth. Value. Excellent. The need to be valued. So, the need for self-worth is the need to be valued. What about need for purpose? What would be another way to say that? So in your job, do you find purpose in your job? In your work? So how would you define that? How would you define finding purpose in your work? You're making a contribution, right? You're making a contribution to the process, to your job. And so the need for purpose is that we all need to feel that we are making a contribution to our world. And our world is through micro and macro. So our world could be myself, my family, my friends, my neighbors, my community, society at large. The need for security. What's another word of saying this? How would you define that? Stability. What else?
Safe.
Sorry?
Safe.
Safe, yes. What else? It's all of those. But it's one word. It starts with a U. There's not many words that start with U right now. Have you heard of the word unconditional? Yeah. There is only one way that this need can be met. Only one way. And that way is through an experience of unconditional love. Only one way to do that. And what is interesting is human beings will go through life. They will continue to go through life looking for ways of filling this gap. Whether it is the need for security, the need for self-worth, or the need for purpose. What is consistent about these three human needs is that they can only be fully met 100% of the time in a relationship with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Because He is the only one that can love us unconditionally. He is the only one that shows us value. He is the only one that gives us an opportunity to contribute and fulfill and grow the kingdom. These three, again, I can't underestimate and underemphasize the fact that these can only be met in a relationship with God. And so what happens is human beings, like I said, go through life saying, okay, I don't feel so loved unconditionally. So if I'm lacking in this area, I will have a tendency to look for friends. Have you heard of people who are insecure? People who are insecure are lacking feeling unconditional love. If you want to net out what that root cause is, they don't feel loved by God. Whether it's something in the present or in their past, but they don't feel God can actually love them unconditionally. That is some baggage that has to be dealt with. Has to be dealt with a father of confession, has to be dealt with in an active prayer life, in an active Bible study life. So that's important to understand. Any questions so far on where we are in this discussion? And I'm really hoping it becomes a discussion. Right now it's only kind of one way. But any thoughts so far? I really like this verse in Ephesians because it really echoes back to the three human needs. We are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. I love this because you see in here that we were created by Him. We are His vessels, right? We are created by Him. We see in here purpose. You see the purpose here, right? And if we are His workmanship, then we see the connection of the unconditional love that we have connected with Him. And so just in this verse, we are fulfilling the three needs. So, becoming the person God created me to be for my future spouse. I have to understand my relationship with God first. Where is that? Where does that stand? What does that look like? What is it tangible? What does that mean? Is it tangible? Do I just call myself a Christian on Sundays? And then at work, I'm a completely different person. But on Sunday, I look holy. But Monday through Saturday, like a completely different dude. Be careful with that because there's an inconsistency. And that inconsistency will disturb your spirit. You have to be one individual. That is where we get the word and the definition of identity, right? So it's very important to understand truly we are in a relationship with our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Evaluate ourselves based on the three basic human needs. So what are those three basic human needs again? I really would like you, if you got your phones, take a picture of this. You want to do it now? These are the three basic human needs that never change. So understanding our relationship with God first, evaluating ourselves based on the three needs, and address the areas of weakness spiritually. We're not talking about socioeconomic. We're not talking about career. We're not talking about environment. We're talking about address the weaknesses through a spiritual connection. There's something that has dropped in the connection. I go back to those three basic human needs. Again, they can only be 100% met in a strong, live relationship with God. So what do people do? If there are feelings of insecurity, low self-worth, or lack of purpose in my life, then I need to work on these areas of my life before pursuing somebody for marriage. So, I'm not sure if this slide is going to come up. There it is. If I find myself in any of these categories, intellectually mature, excel in education, career, and developing strong communication skills, psychologically and emotionally mature, self-confident, the maturity to be able to make a lifelong commitment, spiritually strong, Bible reading, participate in the sacraments, prayer, and serving, financially stable. We look actually, many of us, look at fulfilling all of these except this one. I got to get a job. I got to get a career. I might have to buy a house, or get an apartment, or get a condo, get a car. Okay, now I think I'm ready. And then I'm going to come to the grad group. I'm going to go to another grad group. And the radar is on, right? And I'm ready. But really, are we really ready? Have we met this? And unfortunately, many of us, and I'll speak for myself many years ago, we ignore this part. And actually, if I were to reshuffle this and prioritize it, this is number one. Everything else comes after. Everything else will follow that. Yes.
I have a question/comment. Wouldn't you say that spiritual maturity as well is also a function of other levels of maturity, like the ability to make a lifelong commitment and decisions? Because sometimes we don't make decisions in a lot of areas, and this reflects also in the spiritual commitment as well, and in the spiritual life, and the psychological, social. Like I would see that kind of, it's of course spiritually is very important, But alone, sometimes alone only is also a problematic. Because sometimes people focus only on church perspective, which is amazing, which is nice, but there is a deficiency in some aspect, like for example, financial stability. I think this would be still, if I am a spiritually committed person, but for some reason my financial stability to get into a relationship is not gonna be still impacted. Same with maturity to be able to make lifelong commitment. It would impact spiritually and choices as well as the others as well. So what are your thoughts about the whole package?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I go out to you guys. That's fantastic. So what do you guys think? So if I were just to paraphrase, if we just focus on this, yeah, I'm saying that this is critical in our lives, and this needs to be priority one. But if that's all it is, and nothing else follows, then there's some missing links. What do you guys think?
So it depends what your definition of financial stability is. So I'm saying that because when I was my Sunday school teacher or our senior servant taught us, he said, you know what? As soon as you take that step to get married, and maybe you're just on the beginning path of your career, or maybe you're just starting a job and you're not making that much money, but you're just starting. God will bless the union, and then you'll go further. And I have 3 sisters, and basically it's exactly what happened when they first got engaged. The guys were actually great people, and that's exactly what happened. As soon as they got engaged, they got one job, and then another one, basically getting promoted nonstop. Just happened. So my sister got married last year, and so they got another promotion, basically to another job. And I think God blesses the union. So if you put too much emphasis on that right from the beginning, when a person has other, everything else, then I think that kind of really put an undue strain on the relationship and on the union to begin with, and it just breaks it apart to begin with. And we know that in our culture, there's sometimes too much emphasis on that to begin with.
Yeah, very good. What else? Nancy?
I don't know if everybody can hear me, but I also heard one time you don't want to marry someone or be with someone who is really higher up spiritually than you are, because they're going to look at you as resentment and you're bringing them down, or someone who's really lower than you in spiritual life. So like it has to be someone who's equal as you, and you grow together, because if you're building a home, ultimately you want to reach heaven together, hopefully. Right? So I think if you encourage each other and you make it as a habit, and you talk about it at the beginning and say, listen, our house is going to be a future church and a home that we want to welcome Christ, and He's the foundation, then let's build this up together. Just like any job. Like if you start off as a starting job, entry level, and you build your way up, you get a nice promotion and you make it up big. That's what I heard.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we're all at different levels spiritually. We don't, we want to be able to accept others and be able to grow spiritually in a relationship. There's no question, because we're never at a level where we're not going to be growing, right? We're always growing spiritually. So to accept somebody who also has that same attitude, that we're growing together spiritually, absolutely. Yeah. Anything else about? I just want to go back to what Abuna was saying. Again, sometimes, we reverse the order and say, okay, I'm going to focus so much on my spiritual life that I may be neglecting other areas of my life. So we should be looking at this as a priority list in my life. It doesn't mean that as I make spiritual life my number one priority and my connection with my Creator as my number one priority, in order to achieve those 3, right? Those 3 human needs, and to fulfill those in my relationship with God, it doesn't mean that I neglect the other areas of my life, but I just maybe reprioritize them. They're still important, right? And the package that I'm displaying here is important. But there is growth potential in each of these categories. In each of them. But to look at them as on a priority basis, this would be number one. And then I would leave it up to you to reprioritize what number 2 and 3 and 4 are. So what happens when we become centered on, so we're going to talk about, for the next few minutes, we're just going to speak about what happens if I neglect. So let's say I do have this, but I maybe neglect another area. Or maybe I neglect this area. And my priority is maybe financial stability before spiritual stability. So I just want to take a brief look at these ones. So if I become, say, money-centered, and that's where my security lies, what does that look like? What does that look like? In an individual, what are the characteristics that come out? Well, our personal worth is determined by our net worth. You're basically governed by your bank statement. And your bank statement goes up, you're in a good mood. It goes down, you become depressed. Vulnerable to anything that threatens your economic security. Money making is the lens through which life is seen and understood, creating imbalanced judgment. When the market crashed 2008, 2009, and people began taking their lives, what did we say those 3 basic needs are, right? The need for security. If your security is wrapped up in money, then you have just lost your existence. If it is not founded on unconditional love of God, but it's founded on money, and you're money-centric, and money is gone, it's a natural consequence. Any thoughts on this before we go to the next one? Yeah.
Another point to that, the more money-centered you are, the more cynical you become in terms of what can I gain from someone or what can I gain from a certain experience. And therefore you just don't want to deal with anybody emotionally, you don't care about everybody else psychologically. All it comes down to the bottom line, how can they benefit you instead of how can you benefit others.
Absolutely. I really like what you said, by the way. Because people who are identified with this characteristic, they look at relationships as what they can get out of that relationship, not what they can put in. They're not talking about investing in their relationship. They're talking about withdrawing, right? Taking out. So it's absolutely what you said is accurate. Anything else on this? What about work-centered? It moved here. Did it go? Okay, good. So what does that look like? What does an individual who is totally work-centered look like? Tend to define yourself by your occupational role. How many of us actually, you're at a gathering, and the first thing you're saying, hey, my name is John. Aki? Nice to meet you. It's a pleasure. What do you do for a living? first question, right? First question that comes to us. Instead of getting to know, hey, Aki, nice to meet you. It's a pleasure. What brings you here?
You may answer the question?
Yeah.
I serve here.
Oh, you serve here?
Yeah.
How long have you been serving here? So you see the conversation? Instead of, I want to get to know the individual. But I define the individual with what he does for a living. And that's like labeling. I label the person based on his occupation or her occupation. And we have a tendency as a society to do that. I'm suggesting to you that that may not be the best way to go about introducing yourselves to other people, right? Or when somebody asks you, what do you do for a living? Look for a creative answer. I'm a pharmacist, by the way. So somebody comes to me and says, what do you do for a living? I just tell them straight up, I sell drugs, right? So I'm hoping that by telling them that, I'll shift their thinking of who I am as a person, right? Hopefully it's not a negative. Yes.
And also I heard about work, like if you want to be with someone, you want to have someone who complements your job. Like it doesn't have to be like a pharmacist and a pharmacist or a doctor. Like it's good to have different jobs, I guess, because it brings a little bit more to talk about. Because if he comes home at night and she's a pharmacist and he's a pharmacist and all they talk about is this patient, this counseling, this becomes a problem. Whereas if they have different roles, you know, or different part in the job, I think it just spices things up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's up to the individual, really. I mean, yeah, that's fine, if that's what works for you. You're only comfortable when you are working. That's interesting, right? Take this person outside of work. They become really uncomfortable. At work, wow, there's no problem. You make your decisions based on the needs and expectations of your work. You see your work as your life. These are the people we kind of term them as workaholics, right? Working 24/7 almost, right? 7 days a week. Even their spare time is work, right? Again, we're just exploring when we take our eyes off of becoming Christ-centric. Okay, we're going to take a look at this next one. So it's flipped here. It hasn't flipped over there yet.
Try disconnecting. Try disconnecting.
Okay. Disconnect from the...
Yeah. I can also turn it back on.
Okay.
Yeah, it worked.
Did it work?
You're back to security.
Oh, you back?
Back to security.
Okay, there we are. I just, is it there? Okay. Sorry guys, we'll get there. Okay, there's work. Yeah, it doesn't want to leave it. Okay, here we are. All right, so we covered, what were the first two we covered? What was the first one?
Money and work.
Money, right? Money-centric, work-centric. This is self now. Your security is constantly changing and shifting. What does this person look like? Judgment criteria are, if it feels good, do it. What I want, what I need, what's in it for me. This is self-centric. Does this remind you of the type of society that we live in today? A little bit, right? What's in it for me? How can I succeed? How can I get ahead? It's all about I. You view the world by how decisions, events, or circumstances will affect you, not anyone else. Your ability to act is limited. Let's see, I'll try to connect again here.
Let me turn it off and turn it back on too.
Okay. Is that... Like that? Okay. Oh, yeah. Is it back?
That's why I just said
Here we are. We should connect. Here it is. Okay. Let's go, guys.
Okay.
There you go.
Try it again.
Is it back?
You got that screen up.
Sorry about the technical difficulties we're having. So we're guys, we're talking about self-centric. Your view of the world, of how decisions, events, or circumstances will affect you. Your ability to act is limited to your own resources without the benefits of interdependency. What do you think of this one? What are your thoughts? Yes.
There tend to be people who aren't very self-reflective, and they don't tend to look at how they can improve themselves, which makes them very poor at relationships.
Yes, definitely. That's good. What else? What about this person? Selfish. Yeah.
They don't know how to love other people.
Right.
They do it superficial.
Or yeah, if they do it very superficial. But look again. I think what you were saying there. Looking at what to take out of a relationship, not what to put in a relationship, not what to invest in a relationship. So we looked at work, we looked at money, we looked at self. What about this one? What about looking at another individual to fulfill my needs? Now we're looking at another person to fulfill those needs. Your feelings of security are based on the way your spouse treats you. Your security is wrapped up in another person. And I'm sorry to tell you, there is no person on this planet that can love us unconditionally. There isn't a human being on this planet that can do that. Yes, you had a...
I was going to say that conditional part.
Oh.
Like,
sorry, I beat you to it.
yeah.
Look at this one. You are highly vulnerable to the moods or feelings of your spouse. Your spouse is in a good mood, you're in a good mood. Your spouse is depressed, you're depressed. Your spouse is angry, you become angry. There is deep disappointment resulting in withdrawal or conflict when disagreement occurs. Anything that may impinge on the relationship is perceived as a threat. When your security is wrapped up in another individual, these are some of the side effects that could occur. I just want to quickly review, if the slide will cooperate. So we started discussing this, said, what happens when we become centered? And so my life is centered on this thing, whatever it may be, whether it's money, whether it's self, whether it's work, or whether it's another individual. I know that going back, the three human needs will never be fulfilled in those categories. So now what? Let's say, from a practical perspective, you've identified an area of your life that needs some adjustment, like we all have. Maybe you happen to be focused on career. What would you do to readjust? Let's try to make this practical. If this is your center of your life, how would you make some modifications?
He said quit.
Would you quit? What would you do?
So I just said that.
And you said you quit. You quit your job.
I wouldn't actually quit. No, I'm just saying. I'm sure somebody would.
Yeah.
Not me.
Not me, I would.
You wouldn't quit.
Yeah, I need my job.
Well, I think we all need our jobs, right? We all need our jobs. But we're not talking about, needing our jobs to make ends meet. And meeting some goals, financial goals. There's nothing wrong with that.
It depends on the job you have and if how feasible it is to go to something else, right? If you're literally at work from 6, I know somebody who got a new job there. Literally, they go to 6:30 and they leave at like 8 o'clock every day. So and because it's a much higher position, but they were doing well before because they had another job that was paying very well. So I think it depends on what you're willing to give up. If you can go back to doing what you're doing and still living your life and making good money and being comfortable, that's good. If you want the title, whatever, then it's never going to be enough. So really, you should just come up with a plan how to win it and see what you can do. Just be practical about it.
So I like a couple things that you said. First of all, it's never going to be enough. Right? And we have many examples of that in the Bible. Right? We just keep running. It's like, if you look at the mouse on the wheel, right? You seen that mouse on the wheel? It just keeps running. You had a comment.
So quitting is a bit on the extreme side.
Okay.
But usually, to change from being work-centered, any change in general, you need to do it in increments. So maybe the first step should be setting boundaries in terms of saying, oh, I'm gonna go into work at this time, leave at that time, and try to stick to a schedule. Then the next thing is maybe I'll add a social aspect to my life. or like pick up a hobby or something of that sort to change and shift your attention to something else. So that those are the more practical or realistic solutions.
Absolutely, I agree. I think, anytime you're looking at one of these areas in your life where you've identified an opportunity to make modifications, any sustainable long-term success for change isn't done drastic. Drastic measures are temporary solutions. Only get you temporarily changing. If you want to have a long-term sustainable change in your life, take baby steps. Set short-term goals. Achieve them. Move on to the next one. Right? Yeah.
To add to that, people that are usually work-centered typically take on big financial obligations, whether it be a mortgage or whatever, maybe a business. To scale that down, given your commitments, would be difficult, right? Well, I agree that the best way to achieve balance is to scale things down. You're playing with a scale, you're trying to find that medium, but how do you do that if you can't get out of one commitment that you're obligated to be in, unless you break some laws?
Right.
Right, so
you're bringing up a good point, and maybe the evaluation needs to be done before the commitment's made, right? Because you're saying, I'm now in a financial commitment where in order to meet that financial commitment, I have to work a certain amount of hours that are beyond the normal. So understanding that beforehand, right? I think that's what's important, to have an evaluation that I want to avoid, if I can, becoming this, because that is an imbalance to my life, right? I want to add balance. I saw another hand.
I had my hand up. I was going to say, similar to the point, just to start adding things little by little. I was going to say, maybe start with adding a service that's related to your job, because service is slightly addictive. It's fun to see that something you're doing is benefiting someone, right? So that could be like a sort of a gateway into potentially serving in other ways, and then having a life outside of work.
Yeah, I agree. That it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to introduce a service if you can do that, right, in your job. So I want to give you a practical example of that. I know a dentist, right? So Mondays he doesn't work in his office, but he volunteers his time to do dental work in a homeless shelter, right? That brings value now to his life, because it goes back to what Marianne is saying. He takes this away, this work-centric, and he uses his occupation to bring glory to God, not only in his office, but in his community. He's serving God, right, in his community through his occupation and his profession that God has called him to do. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to do that, if you can. Any other thoughts on this? How do I move practically away? Yeah.
So I think that the recognition is a big thing too, because a lot of times there's a lot of stuff going on in life, and you don't even recognize what's going on. So sometimes you sit back and then just recognizing it, and then asking why, because I think to make changes without asking why is this happening, why am I doing this, I think that helps to create steps to change.
Absolutely. So we reevaluate, right? Just to be able to reevaluate. So before you make a decision to take on more hours, to take on more responsibility at work, yes, there's going to be financial gain ultimately for that, but put it out in a global perspective. look at it from 10,000 feet. Is really that? Is that going to bring you satisfaction? Is that going to bring you fulfillment? Long term? Again, we're all speaking here long term, right? If you feel that this is part of your life, how would you come out from this? Yes?
I would definitely do volunteering if that's the kind of personality I have. But instead of focusing on myself, I try to give my time to somebody else who is in need. So it opens my eyes to the needs of others and try to involve others in my life by volunteering for certain.
Excellent. Absolutely. And also, I echo what also Marianne said. Again, looking for opportunities to serve others in need. You know, it's something when you're at your job and you're so focused on your work and you're bringing results that you lose focus on people who don't have jobs. They don't have a paycheck. They don't know when their next meal is coming from. And you lose that focus completely. But there are people down the street, from where you live, from where I live, from where we work, that are in that condition. And looking for opportunities to serve. Serve in church. Serve in any capacity. Where you're, again, serving those who are truly in need. You have a point?
Another way is to put yourself in other people's shoes. Like a lot of people go by the concept, myself as well included, I don't like to put myself in other people's shoes, which will make me self-centered. You see somebody in pain, you think to yourself, if I was in pain, how can I help this person?
Right.
Like you always put yourself in that person's shoes, that way you're able to help them and not just think about yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. To think about putting yourself in another person's perspective. Yes.
I think before we sit down and figure out the volunteer work, all this, good, great stuff, we need to sit down with ourselves first and find out what our priorities are. Because let's face it, we are living in a capitalistic society. We are driven by aspiration. We all come here as immigrants to better ourselves. So we found our fallback to our niche into our work. So for us to shift, make this shift, even though that you're saying we should start with baby steps, but I've got to have the drive, the motivation to take me even away from that. And that comes from sitting down with myself and finding out what my priorities are. I love my job. For what reason? Is it for money? So I might need to have a lifestyle change to adapt to the new situation I'm going to be in. Is it because of my career? That means I'll have to put down my work to focus on something else. Is this what I want to do? And once I come to this realization that that's really what I want to do, then the steps will follow.
So I think what I hear you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, but there needs to be a reevaluation made, right? You need to reevaluate before you take the steps. And I think that's what you were saying as well. Before you make a decision to make any changes, you need to reevaluate and make a decision to take small steps, small achievable goals. Because sometimes we set the target so high and we don't achieve it. We get disappointed and discouraged and we just forget about it. And we think that it's not achievable. When actually, in all actuality, it is achievable. If we were just to look at it from a different perspective. So you're right, many of us are immigrants that come to this country wanted to make a better life for ourselves. And there's nothing inherently wrong with doing that. As long as I don't lose focus, what is the life that I'm looking to make better? Is it just the material life that I'm looking to make better? Or is it, from, again, 10,000 feet, is it my eternal life that is really the priority? And in that process of getting there, I have a career, I have a job. I want to make sure that everything is in check and in balance, so I don't neglect the higher goal. Does that make sense? I mean, anything else on this one? What if I'm, sorry, somebody had?
I talked too much, I'm sorry guys.
No, it's good.
I was just gonna say, like, get off Facebook and Instagram, just because that stuff messes you up, so, and it makes you self-centered, so, yeah, it's just a practical step.
Yeah, that's good advice, actually, good advice. You know, I heard an interesting talk the other day that how many of us here, I just want to see a show of hands, how many of us sleep with our phones next to us? I just want to see a show of hands.
It's right next to me, man.
Are you shocked? By the way, are you shocked? Do you see how many hands?
I would be surprised if people don't raise their hands.
You would be surprised if they don't raise their hands.
Yeah.
Okay, so this message that I heard, the other day was saying, you know, we will check our Instagram and our Facebook and whatever, Snapchat and whatever else you're on, so many times before we go to bed, with the Bible being next to our bed. As soon as we check our phone, turn the light off and go to bed.
Or the Bible app right next to the Snapchat app.
And so that's what I'm trying to tell you, that in these small little steps that we can take in our lives. So I made it a practice, and I know it's challenging. I made it a practice. As soon as I say goodnight to my family, I put my phone in the kitchen. It's in the kitchen.
In the kitchen?
Yeah, I'll leave it in the kitchen.
What about your alarm?
Yeah, so you have a real alarm.
So you know what? I have it's $8, man, from my It's really cheap, I'm telling you. You guys all have careers, man. You can't afford an alarm clock. Get a real alarm clock, man. Put it next to your bed. Set the alarm. Forget your phone. Because if your phone is next to your bed, the temptation is too great. It's too great. And who are you giving your time to? You're showing God that He is no longer number one. You're about to close your eyes and go to sleep. You don't know if you're going to wake up the next morning. There are many people who will go to sleep. They don't wake up the next morning. Can you imagine? If, God forbid, that's us. And the last thing I did was check my Facebook and not my Bible. Right? So that's what I'm speaking about as far as the baby steps in our lives. These are baby steps that make a significant impact. Significant impact on us. So I want you to buy your $8 alarm clock. I'll send you the link on Amazon. So really, this is really the message that I wanted to get to today. Is that really this is what we want to achieve, is to become Christ-centric. And we have confidence in a relationship with God. He will never leave us nor forsake us, right? And I love this verse from Colossians chapter 1, He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. Am I showing him this in my life? Am I demonstrating that? Do I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do before my feet hit the ground is give him thanks? Or do I check my phone?
Turn off the alarm.
Or turn off the alarm clock? So it is really, it's a call to action, if you will. It's a call to action in our lives. I think I'm going to stop here. There's just one more slide, which this is what a life looks like that is Christ-centered. Christ is the center of my life. Then these things will follow. I have faith in him. I submit to his will. I share his message with others. And I grow in a relationship with him. You see here the symbol of the cross, right? Because the intersection of the cross is Christ himself. So this is what a Christ-centric life looks like. So becoming the person God created me to be first, that is the priority. That's the priority. I need to be that person first. Because if I can't be that person first, then if I get involved in a relationship, it's going to be on shaky ground. So I'm going to stop here and see if there's any questions. Glory be to God forever.